Hi everybody, my name is Paul van Son from the AI Innovation Center, and today we're going to take you into the concept of the AI for Wildlife Lab. We as AI Innovation Center have the mission to industrialize AI in this region, and therefore we need collaboration, we need talent, and we need adoption of AI technologies in companies. And I think the AI for Wildlife Lab is a great example of how we can contribute to this mission by great collaboration with FruitPunch AI, and Sako Arts, co-founder of FruitPunch, will tell you everything about the concept of the AI for Wildlife Lab, what it entails, and how we want to move forward with this.
Amazing. Thanks for the introduction, Paul. Indeed, as introduced, I'm Sako Arts. I'm CTO and founder of FruitPunch AI, and today I'm going to tell you all about the AI for Wildlife Lab, where we want to focus on bringing edge technology to the world, but also doing education and bringing talent to this area. So that's where we're going to focus on today, but I'm going to take you step to what we do at FruitPunch and what this lab is going to entail. And we are very excited for this collaboration together with AI Innovation Space to making this happen, and of course all in the context of AI for good. So I guess we jump to the slides then. Yes. Well, so today, as already introduced, we're going to talk about the AI for Wildlife Lab. So, but first of all, what do we do as FruitPunch AI? Why do we want to organize these things? Well, we are the global AI for good community. And we believe that we want to educate the world in AI, but then using this only on for good projects. So what we identify is there's a great lack of AI for good engineers in the industry. This you all know. But also education is not teaching them to apply AI on the real world. They're mostly focusing on the theoretical parts. And you can believe me, I followed a formal AI education. There's a great lack of the application of big data, biases, etc. In working with AI. And how can you solve this? Well, through challenge-based learning, of course. You need to work with these real-world cases to be able to learn how to tackle them. And furthermore, for companies like maybe yours, it's very risky to innovate with AI and very expensive when you hire a data science consultancy. And here we found a solution. So what we want to achieve is to solve humanity's greatest challenges. We want to educate AI engineers at scale with an ethical and sustainable mindset. Our main mechanism in doing so is the combination of our AI for good challenges and our crowdsourced community. So we have a community of over 1,500 AI for good engineers from all around the world who want to work on AI challenges. They want this because they want to educate themselves in AI, they want to learn how to apply AI in practice, or they just want to use their AI skills for good. We deploy these in our several different challenges. I'm going to go into a few examples of those, but firstly, how does such a challenge look? First of all, we take 25 to 50 of those engineers from our community and we crowdsource them into a challenge that takes 10 weeks. In this 10 weeks, we try to solve a challenge of one of our partner organizations. So first we find an organization that has data and a problem. We then crowdsource the 25 to 50 AI engineers on that. And within this 10-week period, we try to solve your AI for good challenge. An example of that would be the AI for Wildlife Lab. And this is also what we're going to extend on today. So for the AI for Wildlife Challenge, up until now, we have worked with the rangers in South Africa to try and spot poachers onto a wildlife drone. So this is a fixed-wing drone flying over the wildlife reserves in South Africa. And we together collaborated on developing an AI algorithm that is able to detect the poachers on the camera stream of this drone. And we want to take this a few steps further. But besides this one project, we have many projects in the space of wildlife. And that is actually what this lab is going to focus on. So an AI for Good lab basically entails we're going to theme a series of our AI for Good challenges around one of the Sustainable Development Goals. We're going to create a sub-community on this topic and also make specialized education that focuses on the topic that is relevant for this Sustainable Development Goal. Well, all of this sounds very interesting. What can this mean for you? Well, in our AI for Wildlife Lab, we're going to focus obviously on the Sustainable Development Goal number 15, life on land. We want to preserve the biodiversity that exists in our world. So what are some AI challenges that you commonly find in wildlife preservation? Well, one is loads of sparse data. Commonly, we work with footage here, so like the drone images, but also camera traps and other video devices that are planted in the wild. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of images of like trees and areas and lakes and whatever, and very few where you actually have the wildlife that you want to detect, the poachers that you want to detect, etc. So very sparse data. Furthermore, in these areas there's very limited coverage since there are almost no people there, so also AT&T doesn't provide any 5G services. Therefore you can't stream 4K video directly to the cloud to be processed. This brings us to edge hardware. But also this edge hardware needs to be powered, right? You don't have a power grid in the middle of the savannah, so you solve this with batteries. But if you then put a GTX 3080 into a box somewhere, then the battery is going to dry out real fast. So you also need to make sure that your models are actually computationally efficient. So these are some of the problems that we commonly see in wildlife challenges, and this is also where the AI for Wildlife Lab is going to focus on. So we're going to focus on AI for computer vision, anomaly detection to solve the sparse data problem, edge computing, and TinyML technology. We already found a few partners for us to collaborate on this. Obviously, the AI Innovation Center where we are today, but also Cape AI, which is a data science consultancy company that's in Cape AI, the University of Cape Town, Johannesburg, but also the University of Aken here in Belgium. And furthermore, we have some challenge partners, so organizations that actually have some of these challenges laying around, that have data for us, but don't have the means to solve them yet. So one of those is Spots, which is the one that we did the wildlife drone project with. But Zambezi partners, TinyML Kenya, etc., they all have a few of these challenges, which I'll cover in a second. And also Accelera AI is joining forces with us as a knowledge partner that want to inject their edge hardware into these challenges and are looking for talent in this space. And that is something that we are going to provide through this lab. So some of those challenges, just to spark your interest and see what can we work on when we join this lab. Well, one, as already introduced, is the detection of poachers on thermal video camera of fixed-wing drones. But furthermore, we are also attaching a 4K RGB camera on the same drone, and we want to use this to do a wildlife census. So not only counting how many different species are out there, but going to the amount of detail that we can detect still young animals, older animals, and maybe even male and female in some species. Furthermore, we want to find patterns in poacher trace reports. So trace reports here means, hey, the rangers found something, a used trap or some clothing or all these types of traces that poachers leave. If we can detect the areas that they commonly visit to be able to prevent poaching, of course, in the first place. And we want to detect poachers on camera traps that they bind around trees all out through these wildlife parks. Furthermore, we have access to a large data set of different elephant sounds. And we want to be able to distinct between the different animals to map their migration patterns. Then we only have to hang some cameras, which are very cheap in the power consumption space again. We can hang a few of those around the wildlife park, and then we can track all the different specific animals throughout their migrations. Furthermore, we also have some data around that has these elephants with GPS bands on them, so then we can actually track them on exactly the way they go. And we even have a project on wildlife gates, where there are like these very large steel gates that are meant to keep elephants out of small villages. But when they get into the village anyway, they need to be able to let out again. And then we need to detect on cameras whether it's an elephant or people, and if we want to open the gate or not. So these are a few of the challenges that we already encountered with speaking to all our partners throughout the continent of Africa. And these and similar other challenges we want to solve within the AI for Wildlife Lab. And as you can see, almost all of these have edge hardware, TinyML problems, sparse data problems, and that is what we're going to educate people on, but also train people in, which then can be matched with the different companies that we have in this space. So how can you join this effort? Well, you want to become a partner, of course, be part of our AI for Good movement. This means that you and your company will be working towards the SDGs. You can make a significant CSR impact, and you can also leverage our proven crowdsourcing model to actually solve some of those AI for Good challenges for yourself. If you have any challenges that work towards the SDGs, you can use also our AI for Wildlife Lab to work on these. You can match with our AI engineers. We will be educating hundreds and hundreds of engineers in this specific space. If you are interested in these types of engineers, please join us. These people are all self-motivated. They're volunteering their own time, 8 to 12 hours a week for over a period of 10 weeks to work on these challenges because they find this field exciting, because they learn more about it. So these people are all very highly motivated. They have gained real-world experience by working on these matches, and we assess them while doing so. We do through a system of peer reviewing and expert reviewing. We review their individual skills, both in the side of edge hardware, etc., but also other types of AI and software engineering, soft skills, all these things. And you will be sure that they are not only motivated, but also accredited and assessed on several skills. And if you join in as a challenge partner themselves, you can even select the outperformers from such a group. Lastly, you can thirdly, actually, you can also train your AI engineers. Like, you can put your AI engineers in the AI for Wildlife challenges as well. This way they can collaborate with diverse teams from all around the world and learn from all these different cultured people, but also with different expertises and backgrounds. And they will be deploying state-of-the-art AI. So if you right now in your business don't have any state-of-the-art AI, but you do want your people to be prepared to learn about them, please let them join our AI for Good challenges within the AI for Wildlife Lab, and then they can learn from experienced people all around the world. This can even be used to to get some management experience for your current engineers, since those teams also need to be managed in some parts. We make sub-teams with task managers, and there they can gain experience in managing and steering teams in a fun and exciting way while working on AI for Good projects. Lastly, we can solve your data challenge. You can leverage our AI for Good community. If you have any challenges that fit within our AI for Wildlife Lab, please let us know and we can set something up and even connect you to the partners that we already have in the continent of Africa. So what different types of partnerships do we have? Well, we have our main partner. We're looking for one main partner that is willing to sponsor 25,000 euros to make this happen. This sponsor will be in charge of at least 5 challenges where we collect them from the continent of South Africa, and they have a say in how we're going to solve it and which resources we're going to spend. There will be a main thought leader within the AI for Wildlife Lab, and they get a discount on the matching fee that we ask when they match with one of the people from the AI for Wildlife Lab. You can also sponsor a single challenge. If one of those challenges you just heard sounds really interesting, or you have a challenge yourself, you can sponsor one for 5,000 euros. You can connect your brand to our AI for Good movement, and your challenge will simply be solved. Then as a matching partner, you can get access to the assessed AI engineers from the AI for Wildlife Lab. You can, this will cost you 20% of the first year's salary on a successful match, of course, and there will be a small monthly fee included there. Then you have the community partnership. If you just think like, okay, I don't need any AI engineers now, but I do think this is a really cool initiative, and I also think that the people that are interested in my company are interested in this content, become a communication partner of our lab. We will connect your brand as well to this AI for Wildlife movement, and the only thing that we ask from you is communicate within your communication channels about our AI for Wildlife Lab. Lastly, we then have the knowledge partners. We know a lot about AI, and we have several people in our community that know about AI, but we always love to add more and more knowledge from outside the network within the network. So if you know a lot about edge hardware, TinyML, computer vision, let us know, and we can, for example, organize a masterclass where you can give that knowledge back to the community. So that's it. That's our story. That's our AI for Wildlife Lab. Join our AI for Good movement and become part of our lab, and I hope to see you soon.